Hi you guys, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. And today we're gonna do my first little sit down video, which I'm so excited for. And we are going to be chit-chatting about bulking, cutting, how you can gain muscle mass, lose body fat, and really just like transform your physique. So that is what the whole video is going to be about. I actually put a question box on my Instagram yesterday for you guys to ask me questions that you have specifically about bulking and cutting, because I've gone through a few different phases like that over the past probably 2.5 years at this point. So I'm very familiar with it, and it is honestly how I have gotten my physique to just completely look overall more muscular, more defined, stronger. Like bulking and cutting is how I achieved how my physique currently looks. So I'm going to answer your guys' questions that you asked me. I will. Yes, I do. Thank you so much. Okay, let me pull. As far as bulking and cutting, I feel like I should kind of explain the process of both of them because they are two complete opposites. And firstly, you're going to want to start off with bulking first. And bulking, I feel like, gets such a bad rep because bulking doesn't really have like the best, when people say, oh, I don't want to be bulky, blah, 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 like bulking doesn't really have the bad reputation, if that's the right word, when it comes to like the fitness industry and everything, but that is what it is called. So bulking is when you are going to be eating in a calorie surplus or just over your maintenance calories to be able to put on as much muscle mass as possible. Now with this is going to come some fat gain. That's just inevitable when you are eating in a surplus amount of food. Now if you go about it the correct way, you can gain little body fat. If you take it slowly, your surplus isn't too big. Like you can be in a calorie surplus and not gain as much body fat as you think you might gain. So as long as you go about it correctly and slowly, you'll be good to go. So with bulking, like I said, you are going to be eating in a calorie surplus, and you need to make sure that you are consistently eating in this calorie surplus so you can consistently have your weight in the gym so you can build as much muscle mass as possible. And typically with the bulking phase, you really want to be in it, I personally think, for like a minimum 5 to 6 months, because you can only gain a certain amount of muscle per month. So you want to make sure that you can get the most out of your bulking phase by being in it longer. And the more time that you do spend in a bulking phase, the easier your fat loss / cutting phase is going to be, because you have prepped your body and your metabolic rate outside of being in a fat loss phase to make sure that you can be successful and your body will be responsive to a fat loss phase. So the longer that you can spend at maintenance or in your calorie surplus, the better and more responsive your body is going to be for the cutting phase, and the easier it is going to be for you to be able to drop body fat. Now for your cutting phase, it is going to be the complete opposite of bulking, obviously. Cutting phase is when you focus in on fat loss, and this is going to be taking place after you bulk and after you spend time in your calorie surplus. So cutting it's exciting, it's so much fun. However, it is very mentally draining towards the end, especially towards the end, just because dieting is a stressor on your body. So it's not healthy to be dieting, especially for a good amount of time. It's not meant to be healthy, and it's also not going to be healthy depending on the amount of calories that you are consuming. So when it comes to the differences between bulking and cutting, with bulking, you're obviously going to be slowly increasing your food over time. Same thing goes with cutting. You're going to be slowly decreasing your food over time to get you into that calorie deficit. And calorie deficit is when you are going to be lower than your maintaining point, your maintenance calories, kind of like your middle ground. So for bulking, you are above your maintenance, and cutting, you're going to be below your maintenance. And with a calorie deficit, that is how you're going to be able to lose body fat. Drop your food slowly. There's no need to rush anything, especially with fat loss. The slower that you can take it, the easier it's going to be and the better your body is going to respond. Are you losing a tooth? Why do you keep doing that? And when it comes to the amount of food that you should be eating, whether you're bulking or cutting, this is going to be dependent on the person. So I can't really give you a specific answer because my amount of food that I'm going to be eating is not going to be the same amount of food the person next to me is going to be eating. It's all going to be different. However, there are specific ranges that you can kind of go about on as far as like general rule of thumb. And so just for an example, say, stop it. Leave her alone. Vinny, you're okay. Come here. So for an example, say your maintenance is 2,000 calories. Let's just say that's what your maintenance is at. As far as a calorie surplus or calorie deficit, I don't think you should really necessarily go any higher than 2,400 to 2,500 calories for your surplus, and I don't really think you need to be going any less than like 1,600 for your calorie deficit, and that is kind of like pushing it. So it really just kind of depends, one, on how your body responds, and two, what your maintenance is, how consistent you can be with the amount of food that you're eating. A lot of things going to play with it. And like I said earlier, you really need to adjust over time, and it's not something that you can just be like, okay, I was at 2,500 for my bulk, I'm going to drop down to 1,700 for my calorie deficit right away. That is not how that works. You need to slowly decrease over time so your body can adjust, and that way you can, one, just also not be miserable too. Like, no one wants to have that big of a jump or drop in calories at all. Like, that's not going to be fun. But that is kind of just a brief rundown as to the differences between bulking and cutting, my per take on it, and just kind of like tips and tricks for it. So let's finally get into the questions. I probably answered some of them, just kind of like briefly explaining everything right there, but okay, as far as cardio in a cut. So personally, my cardio for my cut, I only do one, just regular daily steps, and then I do incline walking or biking or cycling or whatever. Nothing like too intense, but intense to where I can get my heart rate up enough, where I'm sweating and it's, you know, kind of difficult. But I'm not going to be doing anything like the Stairmaster. I'm not going to be doing sprints, none of that. I like to keep it at a lower intensity. So one, it's maintainable. It's not something that I dread doing. So cardio, the amount that you should be doing, again, it's going to differ per person, how much body fat you have, how much time you have for the cut, kind of how much of a rush you're in, if you just kind of want to take it a little bit slower. Like, it really just depends on the person, what their goals are, how much body fat you have, how much you need to lose, etc. But as far as cardio itself, I just like to have a daily step goal, anywhere between 10 to 12K steps, and then incline walking or biking sessions on top of that. The next question is going to be mindset with bulking. Now, bulking is definitely you're going to get to a place where it's uncomfortable, for sure. It's never going to be easy. And if anyone says it's easy, they're still shredded, they still have abs, they still have pretty, well-defined muscles. Like, take what they say for a grain of salt, because you are going to gain body fat. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's going to happen, especially if you are in a good surplus. So when it comes to mindset with bulking, luckily I don't get too in my head about it, just because I know it is a process, and I knew going into it, I am going to gain body fat. So if I'm too fixated on gaining body fat, I shouldn't have even gone into the bulk in the first place. You know what I mean? So my biggest piece of advice for mindset is that it's not permanent. Where you're at in a bulk is not permanent. It's always temporary, and it is a part of the process. So a question is, how long should you stay in a calorie deficit? And that is a very good question. And again, there are general rules. So I don't think anyone really needs to be in a deficit longer than 5-ish months. And when I say a deficit, I mean a consistent deficit. You can take diet breaks. You can say you're going on vacation for a week and a half. You're not tracking for that full week. You're more than likely not going to be in a deficit if you are on vacation. I personally don't think anyone needs to be in a deficit for longer than like 5 months. And if you are in a true deficit, you're not gonna want to be in a deficit for any longer than that. Like I said earlier, it is going to get draining, and it is going to suck, and it's not going to be fun. So I would say nowhere longer than 4 to 5 months. 6 months is like you need to be cut off. But if you are in a true calorie deficit, you're not gonna want to be in a deficit any longer than that. So how do you start? This is also a really good question because it can definitely be confusing with all of like these phases and all of these terms and everything in the fitness industry, whether it's bulking, cutting, maintaining, body recomp. Like there's so many different things out there. If you are a true beginner, I don't necessarily think you have to fully jump into bulking and cutting and all of that. I really just think if you are a beginner, you just really need to focus on habits, getting yourself consistent, forming a routine, and all of that. But if you are wanting to start taking that next step into a building phase, because like I said, you're going to want to build before you cut, so you have something to cut down to after you build up. Just start slow. Again, like start tracking your food consistently, figure out how your body's responding to the certain amount of food that you're eating, get a set routine in the gym, follow a set training program, really focus on progressive overload, pushing heavy weight, going for the extra rep, like really just focus in on intensity in the gym, consistency with your nutrition, and slowly work your food up over time and just monitor how your body is responding to that. And like I said, when you are building and you are bulking, you're going to be eating in a calorie surplus, so the scale is going to go up. The scale is going to go up, so that is expected. Don't freak out if the scale is going up, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's also just body fat. Like you are trying to put on muscle mass right now, and muscle weighs something. So just take it slow, take everything with a grain of salt, and just don't get in your head about it. So there's another question. Do you still need to do cardio when you're bulking? I personally do not, just because I'm trying to put on muscle mass and try and gain weight. Like that's the whole point of bulking. And if you're doing any extra cardio, any extra movement, it's just going to make it that much harder for you to gain weight. Because with cardio, you're increasing your energy, you're burning more calories, therefore that's just gonna have to lead you to be eating more food. So I just stuck with a daily step goal, and I was honestly a little lenient with it too during my building phase. But no, you do not have to do cardio if you do not want to in a bulking phase. It'll kind of just make the whole process a little bit harder. It's not necessarily saying you don't have to or you can't, but it's just up to you. But I personally did not. Okay, so there's another question. How hard is the cut? Now, I think cutting is 20 times harder. I think cutting is 20 times harder than I do bulking. And the reason being for this is because with bulking, you do have more leniency. The whole point of you is gaining weight, putting on muscle mass, like you're eating a crap ton of food. Like you have leniency with your protocols. With cutting, you don't. No, like going on vacation for a week and a half and I can just throw off my calorie deficit. Like you have to be on point in order to lose fat loss, and I will stand by that. Yes, you can take a day off of tracking and you can do all of that, but when you are in a calorie deficit, you have to be consistent with that calorie deficit for a good chunk of time to truly see fat loss, because fat loss is 20 times harder than just going into the gym and focusing on growing muscle mass. Now, obviously genetics play a role in this, and it's going to be different per person. That just kind of what it comes back down to every single time. It's like, I can tell you guys everything in the book, but what works for me is not going to work for the next person. So everything I'm saying here is what works for me. But fat loss is going to be so much harder than just doing, strength training and eating food, right? Because fat loss is strategic. And your body, like I said earlier, doesn't like dieting. Dieting is a stressor on the body. So you have to be consistent with it in order for your body to be responsive. Be like, hey, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Like we're in a calorie deficit. We need to lose body fat. And when you are losing weight, your body kind of gets a little stressed out from that, because it's like you're putting your body in X amount of stress to be able to lose weight, So cutting and fat loss, it's so much harder than bulking, but it is the most rewarding. It's kind of like the end goal, you know what I mean? Like you go through this building phase, you get uncomfortable, you gain some body fat, you don't necessarily like how you're looking per se, and then the cutting part, it's a lot of trusting the process. It's a lot of like, okay, I know what I'm doing. My body knows what it needs to be doing. We just have to be consistent with what we're doing. Otherwise, everything's just right out the door. So I think cutting is a lot harder than bulking, but I think it is the most rewarding part of the entire bulking and cutting process. Yeah, so I was scrolling through the questions and I answered a lot of them in the beginning when I was just explaining the differences between bulking and cutting. So that is gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys took something away from this. I hope you guys learned something, and if you guys have any other questions, please just drop them down below and I will respond back to you. And if you have any other questions too, you can follow me on Instagram, message me on Instagram. And we are also accepting one-on-one coaching clients right now too. If you are interested in getting a coach with my team and myself, we are accepting clients. So I will also leave the link to apply down below as well. But I hope you guys learned something, and I will see you guys in the next video.